Good day, everyone. This is my name is Dr. Khan. I'm a clinical psychologist, psychotherapist, speech and language therapist, and I'm also doing mental health advocacy. And today we have a very lovely guest, and we did another session with her before that was about more like violence against women and violence against men as well. Today we are going to talk about a very important recent incident. As we all know that there was a trial of regarding Johnny Depp and his ex-wife Amber Heard, and that was a long, prolonged six week. And I just followed that hearing as well, and there were a lot of disturbed image in that situation as well. And even I have seen that recordings, and that recording were played, that image was showing, even that videos were played as well. So today we have Jay, and she's working with Senseless Movement. She have a very amazing and very insightful Instagram account regarding that, and her organization working on these aspects as well. So we will discuss different aspect of that situation with her. Thank you so much, Jay, for coming to us today.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. So what is your take on that aspect? Because remember that when we did our initial discussion, that then even I asked you that are you talking about men as well, because overall in the whole world men are the victim of abuse too. It's not just about, and even they are the victim of victim of domestic violence as well. So
correct.
And you said that you're working from them as well, but we are not talking about that aspect. Do you agree that we don't talk about it?
Yeah, I think this has been a really interesting and eye-opening phenomenon for a lot of people. And I actually don't like using that word, but that's really what it's turned out to be. It's been this global trial that has reached everywhere. And I think the conversations are being had. And I think what's great about this, regardless of the outcome and regardless of what people believe, the conversations around domestic violence, what domestic violence is, what it looks like, male, female, young, old, conversations are being had. People are exploring the topic. People are, inquiring, looking up what such and such means. And so what I'm most grateful about from this, the takeaway is that we're having communication and we're having conversations we should have been having for years.
Yeah, true.
And it's true. I think that, when we spoke last, we did talk about violence against women. And I think that those are the statistics, right? There is typically women will experience more violence or there's a greater number of female victims than male victims, but it doesn't make men or males of any age, it doesn't make them any less of a target, and it doesn't make their feelings and experience any lesser because they're men. And I think that that's the important thing to talk about. I think repeatedly in the trial, there was the recording of Amber Heard saying, "I didn't punch you, I hit you." And I think it's so invalidating to think that there's one thing that may be not too violent or not too physical, but one tiny little thing does take it there. So I mean, I would certainly not want to be spending 6 weeks of my life in these very public, very open trials like this. I think that it was very interesting to watch, but I'm really grateful that people are becoming aware of the conversation. And I think that's where change starts. Change starts in the conversations we're having. That's where the awareness starts. So I'm really grateful, regardless of how people see it, regardless of what they believed the outcome should be, the conversations are moving forward.
And the thing is that I was just looking toward, that statistics about the domestic violence, and I just came across a very interesting study, and that was about in the whole world, men are victim of domestic violence more than women. And according to that, the point was that was physical. I'm talking about physical one. Okay. It was that men are broader. First thing. Second thing is that they are stronger. Their upper body is broader. Female upper body is not broader. So they know that the male know that if they will hit, the girl could get hurt so bad. I mean, I think bad could happen to me. I'm not taking side of any people who are bad, but I'm just saying that that's the reason that they don't hit that much. I'm not saying that people they hit. I mean they hit, and sometimes they hit very bad, very brutal. Sometimes, God forbid, somebody get into emergency situation as well. But the point of that study is that those people, like their upper body is broad, they have more force, so they don't want to get into that thing. But as female are a little bit weaker, so they start doing that thing, and and the man is not maybe hitting back. So there's a different kind of study, different kind of interesting thing came in your. But what hit me back was, and I just quote that example in my post as well, when I just came to that he just went that trial, that he was saying that I was afraid that she might take her life, because maybe she has some kind of personality problem, personality disorder, thing like that. So even so when the judge asked why, then he said that my father was same, he lived the same life. So when we talk about trauma, it's a cycle of abuse,
Mhm.
and these things are transferring in the generation and generation, and we have to stop until it's somebody can, you could say, somebody need to have take step and do that thing. So it's more like that. Those children who face abuse in their childhood, they want to
Yeah.
become a good parent, and sometimes they're giving them most, and they sometimes they're losing their mind as well, that we have to do that because we want to become, because we did not get that kind of attention, that kind of affection from our
Yeah.
family. So we want to give them to our children as well. So that thing was, my father was same, my father was a victim of abuse, and I was afraid. So the point was that that was a whole trauma, and the point was that when that lady fired something against him, he lose the role as well, the very
Yeah.
famous role he was doing, and that is one of my favorite movie role. That is, and you know what? When the judge asked him, and he said that I don't understand why it happened, because I just start that character building from very scratch, so I give it too much, and that is the most interesting character that we see, and he's just out just because of that, which is not proven. So what is your, because he get a lot of he came into media attention, and that was a constant struggle, or you could say a constant mental phenomena was going around there, and he have to appear every day, and he have to face the difficult question that was asking from him. So as a whole, that was you could, that was one kind of revelation to the whole world, that those people are also those people who are powerful, who have money, who have everything, who could have everything, and who could
Mhm.
go to the court of law at any time. These people face these problems so it means that it's a global phenomena. It's not
Mhm.
my problem, it's not your problem, it's everybody problem. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you will agree to that aspect as well.
Yeah, I think, there was so much to unpack in the trial, because you're hearing these very personal, very intimate details of their life, and you're trying to determine, first and foremost, whether or not they're truthful or they're a lie or a fabrication of the truth in some sort. But I think what I noticed about Johnny Depp in particular is the consistency he had in the way that he spoke and the way that he communicated information. I didn't see a lot of emotional disturbance in the way that he answered questions. He was very thought processed in his replies, but I think, when you can tell when somebody is really just here, they know their truth, they believe in their truth, they're confident in it. And I feel like we saw a lot of that from Johnny Depp in this particular trial. And on the other hand, when Amber Heard was confronted with some things that maybe didn't align with previous parts of the trial or with other testimonies, we could see her getting very emotional and her behavior became a little bit erratic. And I think those are important things to call out that are not factual, just observed behaviors. But what I think is really important here is that, I can imagine the scrutiny that these people are facing on a day-to-day basis just when everything's great, but then you add in these really sensitive, really important but scary and personal details that include a lot of emotion and violence and fear and all of these feelings, and it's the weight of all of that has to be so overwhelming. And so I think for what it was, I think the way that the trial was handled, I think was done so well. But with Johnny Depp in mind, and as we talk about male victims and men who are abused, I think sometimes there is a misunderstanding of what that looks like in a male's life. If a man is abused, he must be small, he must be weak, he must be easily intimidated, he must either be a child or unable to defend himself, right? Because the idea is that big burly men who are strong and powerful, they can't be abused. If they have money, they can't be abused. If they're a political figure, they can't be abused. But what we're seeing is that's not the case. It does not matter who you are, how big you are, how small you are, where you've come from. Men and women are being abused in the same capacity. And it has nothing to do with all of these stereotypes that we've placed on and labels that we've placed on what abuse looks like. And I think that this was an example of that, right? Johnny Depp has this really kind of edgy bad boy appearance. He looks tough on the outside, and he is a person of influence. He has a worldwide audience, and he's a successful man. But what we've seen that though in this trial is that behind closed doors, that is not enough to shield him from verbal or physical abuse. And so I think that's important, excuse me, to speak on, because I think it's so easy to say, oh, men, and I've heard this where they say men are abused because they choose to be abused because they're weak. And I think that is such a hurtful and invalidating statement, because as we're seeing, that's not the case. And like you said, these cycles of abuse happen repeatedly. We learned that Amber Heard had experienced some childhood traumas, as did Johnny Depp. And what we're seeing from both sides is that maybe there wasn't the red flags or a call to attention from either side, because they were both experiencing previous childhood traumas, and it became part of the way that they think and the part of the way they interact in their relationships. And now here you are at this pinnacle, and both people have brought traumas and hurts and used them against each other. And so it's really interesting to watch that.
And the thing was that because I don't know, I will mention two, three things in this my giving my point. One thing was that the videos were shown, which was you could say intentionally they were recorded, and that was just he was just angle on something, but it was recorded intentionally. Then they mentioned that the incident of his finger, that bottle was thrown toward him, and that was 2-3 bottles. So he was saying that what you were doing. He said, I went to washroom. So she was yelling outside. So she have to go to the other washroom. Then she was yelling out. She was saying that this is what you do all the time. So he was taking, and they were referring to his, and the other thing was that his whole life was brought into that discussion as that was a drug addict life, that he was a drug addict. And he was saying that even I have seen in the trial, they showed his old messages with the conversation with his friends as well, and they put it because when these things started, a lot of things came out, a lot of things we don't want to come out. We don't want our personal conversation to become public. And even maybe and that was a thing which hit me. So to the core, that was that he said that during the trial, or maybe that was some old conversation, that and the Amber Heard said to him that who's going to believe you, because you're a man.
Because you're a man.
Yeah, because you're a man. Because who is going to believe you? Because you're a man. So these are the things. Maybe she was doing something intentionally or gaining some attention, because I have seen such thing happens over here as well. In our country, there was an actress, and they get married somehow, and maybe after 1 year they got a child as well. And she said that I'm going to take I want to take separation from the husband because he's very abusive. And he has mentioned that in several incidences as well, in different interviews as well, because both are media person. So in different incident as well, that they're going to that he's very aggressive. He could be very aggressive. He could be abusive as well. He could use swear words as well. So I cannot live in such place and stuff like that. And then my men were defending himself, and all of a sudden, the work he was doing, that was taken away from him. Just like same thing happened to Johnny Depp. His role, his famous role, the character he built from that was taken away from him. But what was happening with Amber Heard? She was still the part of Aquaman too. And they have to, the people, the fans have to launch a proper, hashtag in the space. Still in the Twitter, as if you go to Twitter, that there was still a tag that they want her to get out. And she was still the part of that series till the end. I mean, maybe they just have taken that thing as well. So she just claimed one paper, and just because of that one paper, he was out of that movie. But just because of that try, she was still there until the pressure was built to get her out. So let me, finish my discussion about that couple as well. So he take, the, you could say the court ordered that the child will live with the mother, and so the thing was cited and the case would go on. After 1 year, the man win that case. That case was out of the court, having no, you could say, you need a kind of proof, and it was out. And that girl came into media, and she's getting roles. So that was maybe act or stuff like that, whatever she did, but she did not win anything. I mean, the case out of the court. So these things are happening everywhere. So they have, hidden agenda behind these things, getting attention, because people who are, sometimes in media, or you could say those who are model, they have this attention seeking kind of attitude, and they're doing these things. But during these trials, doing these things, they're getting everything, and the society is looking at the perspective of female is a victim. So that was the reason maybe she was not getting, she was still in that big movie, and the person whose gender was out. So that is still the irony. So
yeah, and I think it just shows how strong that gender bias is. And that can be in a negative way or a positive way, right? As you've described, it's we tend to think that men are only the perpetrators and women are the victims. And because of those two categories that differentiate us, then certain consequences only apply to those individuals based on their gender, or whether or not they're believable based on their gender. And I think what I thought about multiple times during the trial was whether or not Amber Heard fabricated the truth or not. People can make their own decisions. That's not why we're here to discuss, but whatever she chose to do, and anybody, it's one tiny fabrication of the truth, whether that's just a slight exaggeration of the details or the time or the location or the severity of a crime, is still a crime nonetheless. False reporting is a crime, right? And so I think what is another point of topic is not only are men victims of abuse, but we're seeing that they're just as afraid as women to speak up. Johnny Depp said in his the post-trial statement that, he knew what he was getting himself into. He said he deliberated for a very long time, and after careful consideration decided to pursue it because he knew that the truth needed to be spoken. He felt like he owed it to his friends and his family, his children, and to people who believe in him. And I think that's very indicative of somebody who is very confident in what they know to be true and who they are and what the factual information is. It says, I know that I'm going into a difficult situation and I'm still prepared to speak on it because I know the difference between right and wrong, and this should not have happened. But it took several years for him to get to that point. So we're seeing that men are equally as afraid to speak up, maybe because they don't want to feel emasculated. They want to be believed, just like women. So it's the same experiences. But the other side of that is false reporting, right? I think the timing of all of this, right? The op-ed and everything else that Amber wrote wasn't during the time that she was being abused. She wasn't, it was much after. It was after another relationship. It was all of these
relationship, maybe we would say many relationship, because a lot of pictures came out.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. And I think from Amber's perspective, I think, a lot of people have split feelings on this, because what she experienced in some point of her life, they've admitted and believe that she is a victim of abuse. And we shouldn't take that away from her, right? But she likely participated in abuse too. They both acknowledged that. They both acknowledged there were difficult parts in our marriage. There were parts of our relationship where we were both abusive and we both did hurtful things. But if there was any fabrication of the truth, any exaggeration that made her utilize her stance as a woman because she's a woman to invalidate or intimidate in some kind of way, or to control the narrative of this story, I just think, that, you know, that's a character issue that goes far beyond abuse, and that goes, but it seems to be I would maybe think a narcissistic trait, because it's like she really was so intentional about wanting to control the narrative. But I think the reality is that she is also a victim of abuse, and then she became an abuser as well. And that's hard, because what we need for her, through these situations, is not just to keep repeating cycles, is we really need formative change. And I think sometimes in these trials, right, people get so hung up on the verdict, who's right and who's wrong. But to me, it's far greater than that. It's, what are we doing? What steps, okay, so you have to pay $1 million. Maybe you should go to therapy. Maybe therapy should be part of, you know, the sentence, maybe real time understanding your traumas, because otherwise we're putting any person back into a cycle of abuse if they can't comprehend and are unwilling to work on certain areas of their life that are either restricting them as victims or allowing them to remain perpetrators. So I do think that there's a lot of opportunity in this trial to have conversations about honesty and cycles of abuse and false reporting, and really the care and the need for real mental health, physical health. All of these conversations need to be had. So for me, looking at from the outside in, you know, there's so much that we can do to move these discussions forward.
The thought is coming into my mind that the court should have asked them to, you know, go to therapy as well, both of them, because no matter how that they were, and a lot of things happened in the past. That was the point. Okay, if it is a trauma, it's still validating, but you know, sometimes you have to, you know, take out yourself from that trauma and see how you're going to do that, because you have to deal that traumas. If you are going to, you know, relive that trauma again and again, definitely one day it's going to collapse you. And over here, you know, there are two, three things as well. You know, abuse is not always about physical; it's emotional as well. It's unvalidating something. It's passing and remarking some bad comment or other. Even cheating is also, I would say, kind of, you know, abuse to someone as well. So I would like to mention another case over here as well, which was happened in the RC. Maybe also might, everybody knows this about this. There's about Will Smith, that he went and he hit that person, and because his wife was having no hair in his, and somebody passed a comment on that. Okay, so my point was that because people don't know his life, and people don't, because both of them have a very tough relationship, and the point was that maybe the woman was involved into other person as well, and there was, you know, very prominent relationship as well. So the point was that you know, and maybe why he did, because he tried so hard to maintain that marriage, because maybe same thing was Johnny Depp was doing the same thing.
Yeah,
that's why he was in that relationship. That's why he want to save that girl. Maybe, you know, whatever you do, love is not going anywhere. People are in love, that's why they are living together. They have children as well, so for children they are living together, no matter how circumstances. But people have to, you know, come to a common ground, because two people cannot live together for so long. You have to have some common ground. You have to have children, and you have to have, you know, their things as well. So same thing happened after that. He was out of, you know, a lot of things, and now I think I just heard that news that they just, you know, that Jetal also filed you know, I think divorce from that person, that Will Smith. So, you know, these things are going and nobody are talking about that thing. But you know, both of him, well, maybe people would say that why you are taking side of other people. Over here we are neutral people, because especially I'm a therapist, I cannot take a side. I cannot take, because even if a couple will come to me, I will listen to both people, because both are my client. So you know, when you are therapist, you are not going to pick or choose any side. When you educate, then you have to, you know, look into a lot of things. But in both sides, men are victim. Men are victim of maybe abuse. Men are victim of maybe cheating, and there are a lot of things. And how society is looking toward that thing. So, you know, they have a lot of pressure, because Will Smith have a lot of pressure, and he was 50 years old, and I know that because he talked about that thing a lot, that how he developed that relationship, or how he saved that relationship for so long. No? And if somebody would come toward him, and maybe if he didn't, maybe his wife might did not, you know, forgive him for what he did. So, but he forgive his wife. So, you know, there's a lot of things. it's not that a man is, victim of woman. Everybody could be victim. So the thing is that mental health is a global issue, trauma is a global issue, and these things are global issue, and we have to have more discussion about that. It's not about choosing sides. Both
Yeah,
people need help. That is
absolutely.
the point. Both people need help, not just Johnny, but her need help as well. Just to have that trauma, maybe that was as a therapist, I would more look into that thing as a couple therapy case.
Yeah.
That was a therapy case. If you could see from other perspective, despite of the fact that they're trying to get something out of it, and they're a victim of a lot of things, but they need couple therapy, or or maybe they live together or not, but maybe they should have taken it before. Maybe the situation was different for, so there was a lot of things. Even the point is that despite of having a lot of education, having a lot of resources, a lot of fame, a lot of access to all kind of medical facilities, or you could say mental health facilities, they did not went for that thing. So I think these talks are so important to have on regular basis, so that is, instead of going toward these extremes, because these extremes are, and these decisions are going to affect them for so long. Even their children
Yeah.
are going to have the remnants of these things as well. But the thing was that if they try to choose to go to therapy the moment that thing started, maybe the situation was different for both of them. What's your opinion about that?
Right. No, I think you have a lot of really good points here. I think on the one hand, right, I think people are really scared to report for a number of reasons, and we know that, but I think it's a lot of times ego gets in the way, right? Whether you're a male or a female, people are scared what people will think of them. People are afraid. And so obviously you have a fear because you've been a victim of a trauma, but you also have fear because now I have to consider if I'm going to be judged or criticized or punished or all of these things. And I think what we're seeing is things that have happened behind closed doors come to public.
Yeah.
And when you're in the public eye, obviously there's more scrutiny for certain behaviors and decisions that are being made. But that's not the main point. The main point isn't what happened one night at an event. It's what happens every single day behind closed doors in a relationship. And I think, we're just seeing it, and the world's like, oh my gosh, shock. But Will Smith and Jada have been married for 25 years. Who knows how long this is happening? They've both spoken about this before. They've talked about difficulties in their marriage. And so the reality is we don't know if they're both victims or perpetrators. We don't know, but we're seeing it come to light. And the same is true with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, right? And so many other cases. We're seeing one little portion of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp's marriage and difficult parts of it, but we don't know about the day-to-day. And the other side of that is we don't know about the good parts, because as you know, in a cycle of abuse, it's, there's a high point, there's a pinnacle of where we're happy and everything's great. And everything is, we're on the same page and we're excited to be around each other. And then we start going back around the cycle of abuse, so where different behaviors begin to form and to change. And so I think first and foremost, I'm never going to say that what happened, what Will Smith did to Chris Rock, I don't think there was any reason to put your hands on somebody. And I think that's true of all violence. But I think because there's this persona that men in particular, or influential men, have to have it together, and they have to be so buttoned up, and they have to be so, they have a reputation to maintain, that we're seeing sort of what that looks like. It's like when you have an earthquake, right, the ground starts to get to a place of tension, and then it breaks. And we're seeing that in a lot of these men's lives. They've been holding in these maybe childhood traumas or traumas from high school or in their marriages, and they're getting to a place of where they're breaking and they're speaking out about it. And I think while that's probably incredibly painful for any man who's doing that, or even woman, it's so necessary to be vulnerable, because we can begin addressing these behaviors. And I think the other side of it is, specifically here in America, we live in this societal, expectation of like toxic behavior. And then you got two sides of that, right? You got people who really are excited. They like toxic behavior. They want to fight with their spouse or significant other. They like that.
And
that
they enjoy
position.
actually that thing. They enjoy that hitting at that part,
They do. And then there's other people who are really trying to move away from that. And I think the other part of that is when you tell somebody, you know, and victims hear this all the time, victims of abuse, I love you, and this is why I hit you. If you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have done, I love you, but you made me do this to you. And I think I think that it's important to separate what love and abuse are, because they are not the same. Love and abuse are very different. Love is not abusive in any sense of the word, and it does not come with abusive behaviors. So if somebody genuinely at their core loves somebody, and they're going to do what they need to do to break bad habits and to break down all of those parts of them to prevent themselves from hurting another person, or they're going to at least do their very best. And I think when we've allowed our society to say that love hurts, sometimes love hurts, or all of these other little quotes and sayings that you hear, and I think it's just, we're creating this idea that it's okay to be toxic behind the closed doors. It's okay to be toxic in your marriage. If it's what, you know, this is our relationship, we're allowed to do that. We're keeping people broken, and instead of breaking and healing, we're breaking and breaking other people. We're staying broken and hurting other people. And I think so for me, when it comes to violence, whether it's a male or female, it does not matter the gender, it doesn't matter where you're from in the world, it's the trial, the right, the wrong, it doesn't matter. For me, it's what are we doing every day, Monday through Sunday? You know, how are we thinking? How are we really behaving? What's happening when we're not on a Zoom call, or we're not at work, or we're not in the public eye? What's actually happening? Where is our heart and our mind aligned to? And how then do we allow those behaviors to become productive and healthy and beneficial? And I think that's the conversation that people should be having more of. And I think as a result of that, you'll see changed behaviors, and you'll see new mindsets, and you'll see healthier relationships overall. And we need that, because if not, we're just repeating the same cycle as a society for the next generation and generations to come.
Thank you so much for such a nice discussion today we had, and I really much agree to the things you have said, that and the things that fight is maybe part of relationship, because whenever two people live together, they have this fight. But the important thing is what happened after that fight. What do you do after
Right.
that fight? So you're going to
Right.
drag that thing, or you're going to resolve this conflict, because these are part of human nature, that aggression is part of human, emotions are part of human nature. But the thing is that how you're going to resolve this thing. But thank you so much for having this insightful discussion today. And that was that was interesting, that was thought provoking, that was getting to a lot of question and getting to a lot of insightful things that maybe which we have done, which we might do on daily basis, maybe if not daily basis, maybe weekly basis, so that people start to think about that, okay, it's something wrong, we need to work on that. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe if you're an abuser, that maybe you can start become a better person, maybe after hearing these discussions, and you stop abusing other person, and you stop abusing your child, you stop abusing your spouse, you stop abusing your parents, or you stop abusing your friends as well. So I think you can change at any time. You can ask for forgiveness, and you can start acting like better person, and you can do that at any time in your life, as
Yeah.
as much as other person allow you to do that. So
Yeah.
that was nice to having you today. Thank you so much, and see you in another discussion. Bye bye.